People are allowed to have their own fetishes, their own, I'm not, kink shaming anyone.
I think people should be having sex instead of wanking all the time.
Oh my God, a fat person is dared to speak out. We're all gonna die one day. In the past 3 months, 5 women porn performers have died, and I think that we need to be supporting women to make their own ethical porn.
So I'm kind of dubious about what ethical porn really means.
When I say ethical, that's kind of almost a little bit misleading because everyone's ethics are different. The people making so-called ethical porn say themselves are like, well, it's ethical to me, it might not be ethical to you.
If they are reinforcing the same kind of ideals of beauty, sexual fantasies that play out a lot of violence or a lot of misogynistic sort of scenes, then I'm kind of reluctant to call it ethical porn.
I don't want to praise porn because I think people should be having sex with each other instead of wanking all the time. Well, there's nothing wrong with people having sex, and there's nothing wrong with people having sex on camera. So the final product of watching two people have sex is not unethical.
Why is there so much porn that is basically trying to advertise women that look as young as possible?
Because that's
porn.
what men like.
But doesn't that reflect?
Why can't we unpick
Should we not unpack?
Would you unpick the own things you're attracted to? I think it's strange.
I unpick it all the time.
Why would you do that?
It's about the power relationship. So when you're talking about the sort of the old guy and the little, the young underage girl, that's a problematic power relationship. If I had a mate,
underage porn is illegal and people go to jail
but
for
having
it, so
women
it's slightly
dress up
different.
as schoolgirls,
who wears a school uniform that's over the age of 18 is what I want to know. Nobody.
Like, you don't see little schoolboys dressed up, do you? Like, is it?
Well, you don't see much. Maybe you do. I don't know.
I've never seen a schoolboy.
You've never seen a male stripper in a schoolboy's outfit? I'm sure.
No, I've never. I swear to God. Now that I've even just thought about that. You know what? That's really interesting.
That is when
I
we
think
all had our sexual awakening, probably when we were wearing school uniform.
No,
and
it's
the opposite
because- so
sex
you
was-
think
no. I'm just trying to understand. I think I'm not interested in that. That's not what turns me on. But I'm trying to empathise with why that is, rather than saying it's problematic or quasi-paedophilic. Porn responds to people's tastes. It's not. It isn't porn has these ideas about sex and is brainwashing people into believing them. Actually, people click on the kind of porn they want to watch.
A lot of young women that I've spoken to are sort of 15, 16, end up with STIs, or actually they're just like hurting themselves because they don't know how to have sex properly, because they are going by what their young boyfriends or partners have seen in pornography.
I mean, if you're watching it every day, you're being satisfied by certain things. You're kind of having to watch more and more extreme kind of porn to have the same kind of satisfaction.
The point is, you've decided what you think good sex is, and you think that we should have education to learn what your view of good sex is.
The thing is that I think absolutely people are allowed to have their own fetishes, their own, I'm not, kink shaming anyone.
It's quite interesting how it's like, we're just talking about like men and women, but obviously there is like queer porn, which is a developing industry, which has all the, your kinks and fetishes in, and, is genuinely quite ethical because people get to choose what they want to do. If, people do want to be hurt and slapped and tied up and all kinds of stuff, but it's showing that consent process, and that is something that I don't see in a lot of kind of straight mainstream pornography.
If you want that, then you should direct porn. People would skip past that bit anyway. Skip to the good parts.
I think that kind of brings it back to why we need to be making sure to sort of empower women and empower all people who participate in the porn industry.
Sometimes we end up in this sort of conservative thing where we push pornography into like the darkened room with the person having a wank, and I think that's where it gets, and that's
where the magic happens.
That's where the magic happens. But it's also that's where the stigma comes, because then we become ashamed of ourselves doing that, and therefore then we start shaming the people working in it. And I think if we were just a bit more open, then that stigma wouldn't be there.
Recently, there's been a Cancer Research UK advert that has caused some controversy and been accused of fat shaming as it highlights the problem of obesity. Obesity is really a problem in our society, and I think we shouldn't shy away from that.
This comedian is it Sophie Hagen? Rather than simply disagreeing, she called for it to be banned, which is now the default response. This advert was pretty mild. It didn't really make any accusations to people. It was quite stated.
I think, yeah, I mean, I think that was kind of almost the problem though, wasn't it? It was like, it could have been read in so many ways, and she read it in a negative way because we're in a culture where that's what fat people are subjected to. Everyone's like, oh my God, we're so indignant that a fat person is dared to speak out about something that offends them. But she's got every right to be offended by that if she wants to be, you know what I mean?
I can see why, you know, she would be upset about it if it just turned up in your sort of news feed. That's how we receive information now, and you're just like, well, what the hell is this going on, without any kind of
context. There was no context
explanation.
That was the problem with that, I think.
I mean, I do think fat shaming is an issue in society. People are still getting bullied and stuff around that. So maybe there was like something where this might have, you know, to use that word, like triggered something in her response about it.
We have to start somewhere, because there are a lot of, you know, health problems, and there is a lot of strain on the NHS. I mean, in my own family, there's just like zero kind of awareness of what healthy food even is. But like the majority of people don't consume that kind of literature, and they're not going to know about these
I think
things.
most people know about this stuff. I don't think they, you know, necessarily want to follow it through. And you demonise, you know, fatty food, then you do end up demonising fat people. Certainly when I was growing up, there was a whole genre of television programmes dedicated to making fat people cry. They'd examine their poo, and they would say, you've been lying to us, you're a greedy liar, you lied about how many Twixes you had for breakfast last week, and then they would cry. I think the problem is this kind of fetishisation of health. I mean, everyone knows that being morbidly obese is not a good place to be, but at the same time, nobody is perfectly healthy, and I feel really sorry for the people who chase health as this kind of transcendent goal.
We're all gonna die one day.
Exactly, and then the poor fuckers get cancer at 50, and you know they're really upset because they're like, I did the right thing, I wasted my life, I could have, you know,
no, that's so true.
been binge drinking. And
I don't think that health is something that we should kind of scornfully be like, oh, you know, why does anyone care about health? Because I do think that, you know, a lot of people actually, it has a really positive effect in their life.
Skinny people aren't necessarily any healthier.
Yeah, I mean, this is it, isn't
I mean,
it? Like,
this is the thing. Like, people's relationship with food is often emotional, and it's connected to overeating or undereating and like mental health stuff. And like, that conversation just doesn't happen at all.
And I think what some of Sophie's tweets said, which I thought were really important to note, was the fact that fat shaming people doesn't work. It gives people mental health issues, and it doesn't make them want to get up and lose weight.
We should be conscious of fat shaming people, especially like in a society that does kind of makes people feel bad about themselves. But I think that we also need to really focus on health and the strain on the NHS. And I do think having some kind of education about nutrition and about health would benefit in a way that isn't really shaming people.